It's time for us to resume our meeting. We now have 2 more members for the first round and 1 for the second round. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Mr. Chairman, this funding application involves the agriculture and fisheries industries, which occupy less than 0.2% of our GDP and less than 0.3% of the workforce. Well, they have 60 seats from the egg and fish. If half is from fisheries, they'll represent 25 times their GDP and 700 times the employees. For every vessel, it will be $12,500 per year, around $4,000 per capita. I don't think the paper is proposing a direct distribution of money. But of course, the fishermen will expect actual assistance. Just now, the Bureau Director made it clear those aspects set out in the paper. Frankly speaking, the modus operandi is actually bullying them. Please speak closer to the microphone. One of the aspects in the paper is mariculture. Well, this is rather scientific. As far as I know, in Japan, well, they're famous for culturing abalone, which is a high-value product. But then abalone is very sensitive. If the water is just slightly polluted, they'll die. For those who study biology, for those who have a PhD degree in aquaculture and so forth, they'll be able to tell you more. So the whole supply chain asks for a great deal of professionals and talents, assistance. And of course, just now we learned that many fishermen are illiterate. They're illiterate for many generations. They're looking for actual assistance for fisheries. You must have objectives, strategies, and action plans. You must tell us who is going to carry out all these. In this paper, we understand that you rely heavily on the fisheries to come forth to apply for funding. But of course, if these proposals are practicable, they would have been implemented already. Just now, some colleagues asked whether you have specific methods to assist them. You said you had a vision. You mentioned what you expected in your childhood, what should happen in future. But we're not talking about vision. For this $50 million per year, do you have any objectives to measure sustainability? For any project, you must have benchmarking. Well, how many employees, for example? By giving them $50 million per year, how will the GDP be boosted? How much fishing catch you are looking for, etc., etc. I have to emphasize that you have to set objectives, strategies, and action plans. And there must be value for money indicators. Bureau Director, Mr. Chairman, I think a few members mentioned indicators. Given the geography and other conditions of Hong Kong, it is very difficult to compare ourselves with other jurisdictions. Objectively, there is nothing to compare ourselves with and really cannot quantify our indicators. As for Mr. Sin's questions, when I answered other members' questions, I already pointed out that we're not passive, if that's the impression that colleagues got from the paper. For the science and technology sector, we would like to apply R&D results to the industry in working out collaboration plans. So in future, in the panel, you should report your progress. Next, Mr. Michael Tan. Mr. Chairman, in the last century, in the 1970s, we relied firstly on the primary industries. The tertiary industries only started, and now most of our economy is from the tertiary industries. So for the primary and secondary industries, the New People Party is of the view that we must have high value-added industries, high-quality industries, and high-end industries before the proposals are worthy of our support. If we're just to support the sustainable development of an old industry, if we still give it money, it will just be put on the drip. So we have reservations. For high-quality, high-value-added industries will provide our traditional support. So as our colleague said, apart from primary and secondary industries, well, we should treat primary and secondary industries equally. Now, my first question is on details. Now, you're going to set up this fund. After obtaining funding, the applicants could conduct R&D. They should make public their R&D results and should not pocket the profits. And anybody owning a fishing vessel can apply for funding. Is this a loan or just a subsidy, which needs not be repaid? I still don't understand the details of this fund. Secondly, will you consider using high quality, high value added as criteria for approval? What do I mean by high value added? It should be high-end industries or industries with high efficiency. Take, for example, in the past, they only had a catch of 100 fishes, and now that is to be increased to 1,000 given this funding. They should not just insist on past practices. We should not use public money to support something that is no longer sustainable. Dr. Koh? Mr. Chairman, I very much agree with Mr. Tan. The objective of this development fund is precisely high quality, high value added, and high-end production. We have already provided counseling to fishermen earlier in order to introduce new fish species and boost the catch size as well as the quality of the industries. Technically, whether it should be a loan or a subsidy and will repayment be required, I will defer to the director. Mr. Chairman, members mentioned funds in the past, but those were only loan funds, purely for handing out loans. Now, this development fund is purely for providing assistance. Well, the word assistance is too vague. So, this will be a loan fund, grant, not to be repaid. Well, let the director finish. Mr. Chairman, I now understand the issue. I'd like to go back to Dr. Koh. That means in future, all items are proved to be high value added and high end in nature. and in future will examine what items you had approved. So it's either high-end products or high-value-added products. If that is the case, the new people power will support the proposals.
Yu Chung, Chairman. I heard the Secretary trying hard to answer members' questions. Chairman, may I make another supplement? If we could wait for a while. Yes, please continue. Mr. Koh has tried very hard to answer members' questions, especially the question by Mr. Michael Teen and Mr. Sin Chung Kai. The questions are about objectives, value added, and so on. To me personally, I don't think you're able to answer the question satisfactorily, although Mr. Teen subsequently changed his stance and said that he would support your proposal. I don't think you've really resolved the core problem here. The fishing industry is now in decline. What is the reason for that? It's not just because of the outdated technologies. What is important is whether or not there is still room for the fishing industry to survive and operate. For the fishing industry, it's not just technology which is important. They need a good ecology, whereas in Hong Kong our ecology is so bad. How can they survive? Even if you try hard to improve on the technologies. To give you an example, 2 or 3 years ago, CLP laid some submarine cables and many fish died in San Mun Chai. How can we resolve such a problem? And when the fishermen asked for compensation, the government said that it was not their fault. So you can imagine the plight that the fishermen have to face. This is only one isolated incident. There are many other incidents in which the pollution had simply made it impossible for the fishing industry to develop. Mr. Lam Tai Fai also asked you what are the targets you have set regarding adding value. Other than some colleagues are questioning why you're not helping the other industries as well. It's not that we don't want to help the fishermen so that they can have sustainable development, but the environment simply make it impossible. How can you help the fishermen? So why don't you tell us instead that is other than setting up this fund, how can you control the ecology and the natural habitat so that the fishing industry can develop? Otherwise, if you cannot tackle that core problem, the fishing industry simply cannot develop. Regarding our targets, I think we've already mentioned them. If by target you mean the objective, then of course we cannot comment on that today. But if we have the targets, we can compare the economic value of the fishing industry's output today compared with what it will be then. After we've done all these, implement all these measures, we can find out what is the value of the output of the fishermen. For example, the amount of catch by fishermen, I think based on the energy consumption per unit, for example, how much fish could be caught per kilowatt of horsepower of the fishing vessel. There are many such indicators that we can provide for members to make comparisons. Regarding the natural ecology, in Hong Kong we do have to face this reality. In Hong Kong, we only have about 1,000 odd square kilometers of space. Our territorial waters is limited in size. We also need to develop other infrastructures which may damage the environment. But the efforts that we're making now is to protect the environment, to conserve the environment, and also to develop our economy, and we're trying hard to strike the balance. We've worked very hard in the past to protect the water quality, and it has worked. For the fish farms in Hong Kong, after all the management measures that we've put in place, many of the aquacultural farms, you'll find that the fish water quality there has improved. And recently, we are now, someone is once again proposing that we should, for example, develop or cultivate fish fries in local waters. when we ban nearshore trawling, again, that is one initiative for conservation and also developing the fishery resources in our Hong Kong waters. All the signs are suggesting that we're seeing improvements. In other words, with these improvements, I think we can continue to catch fish, but we shouldn't stick to the traditional methods. We should use better methods and value-added methods. Mr. Wong Kok Heng, you have 3 minutes. 2 short questions, Chairman. First of all, to follow up on my previous question, could the government say 1 year from now give us a report so that we can find out the progress, how much you are able to help the fishermen, and how much the output for the industry has gone up? At the panel, I also pointed out that the fund set up, I support the government's proposal to set up this fund, but I also hope that the Secretary will also, at the meetings of Bureau Secretaries, you should fight for the support from the other policy bureaus. Without the support of the other bureaus, and if they don't care at all, then even if you have set up this fund, it's difficult for the fund to operate. At that earlier meeting, I gave the example of the Aberdeen typhoon shelter, where some fishing boats or fishermen who are involved in fish processing, they want to change the mode of operation in order to follow the government's policy, but they are subject to all kinds of red tape from the Transport Department and so on and so forth. Some fishermen want to retrofit the vessels in order to engage in recreational fishing, and because of various red tapes, they simply cannot do it, despite the fact that you are now setting this fund. So at the meetings among policy bureaus, could you please try hard to fight for the support from the other bureaus? Chairman, to answer Mr. Wong's question, the direct answer is yes. And secondly, regarding your second question, indeed we will do what Mr. Wong suggested. Whenever policies involve other policy bureaus, if they have their own difficulties which would make our development difficult, then we'll look at the nature of the problem. If it involves, for example, marine safety, then I may have to rely on this fund to help the fishing vessels to ensure that they can be retrofitted to comply with the safety standards. If our initiatives, if the other bureaus can work in tandem with our policies so that we can do better, then we'll certainly fight for that. Mr. Michael Teen. Chairman, you know what I'm going to say. I just want to clarify one point about Mr. Wong Yu Chung saying that I was changing my position. In the New People's Party, I think in our manifesto we talk about the need to develop the economy and develop local training, and Para 4 introduce new technologies to assist the industry to enhance the technology of fishermen, improve quality, to be market oriented, and to go for high value products and so on. It's all here. I'm very happy that the government have responded to aspirations. I emphasized just now that we must go for high value added products. All right. If no other members have further questions, I will put this item to the vote. Will all those members who are in favor of FCR 44 put up their hands? Okay. Some members have asked for a division.
各位委員注意
Members, please note the item to be voted on in the display board is agenda item number 3, FCR 2013-1444. Voting begins now.
喺表決結果宣佈之前，請各
Please check your vote before I declare the voting results. Voting stops. Please display the voting results. (29 for, 23 against, abstention 0). The proposal is endorsed. Let's move on to agenda item 4 then. In the interest of time, I would now like to adjust the speaking time. Q&A included, 3 minutes for each member. Item 4 is FCR 2013-1449. This item invites members to approve the creation of a commitment of $5 billion for injection into the language fund. The EDB has consulted the education panel on the 9th of December 2013 to answer members' queries. The following government officials are here. Mr. Adi Secretary for Education, Dr. K.K. Chan, Deputy Secretary for Education, and Ms. Jenny Chan, Principal Assistant Secretary for Education, Education Infrastructure. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Lam Tai-Fai, Chair of the Education Panel, to take us through the outcome of the discussions of the Education Panel. Chairman, the Education Panel has discussed this funding application at the meeting on the 9th of December 2013. Members agree that various measures to be embarked on to raise the language standards of Hong Kong students and members of the public. But then some of the members have reservations of this one-off grant of $5 billion because that would make it difficult for the electrical to monitor the spending on individual items. Also, some members are also concerned that the proposed measures will increase teachers' workload, so they urge that the government should first provide sufficient manpower and teacher resources before the measures are undertaken, like increasing the number of language teachers. The administration noted members' concern, and they said that in some of the annual allocation for the language fund will be used for providing support to teachers and schools. And some members asked that the administration consult more in-depth the relevant stakeholders. That's item 4, right? Or the submission that I received is really for the next agenda item. 3 minutes each for members. Mr. Wong Kwok Hing. Chairman, I support this grant. I think it's important that we raise Hong Kong's language standards. I have 2 questions for the administration. The $5 billion will not be spent over, say, a period of 3 years. It will be phased out. So can the administration undertake to report annually to the education panel or the electrical the effectiveness of the grant and the progress of various projects? That's my first question. Second question, because we are not using the entire amount in one go, it will be expended by phases, so that a large amount will be unspent at any time. So what will the government or how will the government use the remaining balance so that the public funds are put to good use and the taxpayers' money are put to good use? 2 questions. Thank you, Mr. Wong, for your questions. I will tackle the second question first.
This $5 billion will be in the form of a seed money, and we will be using the return of that seed money to implement various initiatives under the language fund. So there are two parts. One is the principal, and then the return on the principal. So this is the nature of this grant. We hope to continue carrying out the initiatives so that we can make better planning. Now, as for the usage of the fund, we will make or compile annual reports. But then language programs last a long period, and we need time to observe their effectiveness. We may take a longer time to really come up with an assessment of their effectiveness. But anyhow, we would be making annual reports. Chairman, I would support the grant or the allocation. Mr. Yip Kim Yin, I have a very important question. And whether I would support this application depends on whether the Secretary will make a clear undertaking. Now, for this grant, as what the Mr. Lam Tai Fai said, was not endorsed by the education panel. The $5 billion is a huge amount. Of course, naturally, the education sector will be very happy about it. But now we are not supporting it. So the funds will be used for supporting curriculum and also coming up with new research programs, and it won't be used for employing new teachers. And actually, the English language teachers have a very hard time among all the teachers in the school. And now, with this programs under the fund, they would have to spend more efforts in developing curriculum, course materials, and research programs, while they're going to have a very heavy or even heavier workload. Now, if the fund is not put to good use, it will just be another burden on the teachers, and it won't help the teachers. So I hope that the Secretary can, at this meeting, make an undertaking, and that is now in the allocation, in the allocated fund. It will be providing support in terms of manpower resources to schools. Can the Secretary make that undertaking? Thank you, Mr. Yip, for your question. I think this point is important. We support your proposal, and in helping the schools to implement biliterate and trilingual language policies, we must consider teachers' workload. So Mr. Lam also mentioned that if any programs are going to create extra burden or workload for the teachers, we would make the relevant provisions and the relevant support. Every year, if we use 5% return rate, $250 million per year, now over 55% of the funds will be used as providing support to schools and teachers. We attach a lot of importance to supporting the teachers. So we would be heading towards that direction, and we would not be casually increasing the burden on teachers and their workload, when actually many of the programs are aimed at reducing the workload of teachers. Mr. Michael Tian, I welcome the Education Bureau's considering my points about stimulating students' interest in learning language, and that is included in paragraphs 8, A and B on page 4. So I propose that the government should conduct tracking results on tracking surveys on students' learning interest. I have 3 questions in that survey. How interested are students in learning language? And if yes, why? And no, why? And what would make them interested in learning language? We should have a tracking surveys on such types of subject. Now, we also suggest that we should conduct focus group meetings among primary 3 and primary school students. We should interview them, and we should do some samples. And we should not model after GSA, which is not a good model. Now, apart from that, tracking surveys, we also raised earlier that non-formal curriculum can really enhance the students' interest in learning language, because in formal curriculum, it was just really practices for examinations, say to take exams like DSEs. Now, without exams, students will be under less pressure, and that will be good. So in that regard, for that non-formal curriculum, they need a lot of resource teaching materials like multimedia materials. So why Finland is so successful in teaching English? Because they have brought in a lot of TV English documentaries. They are given various subtitles for these documentaries or films. So all this needs money. So, Secretary, would you undertake to strengthen developing non-formal curriculum teaching materials? And also, can you also undertake the number of classes for English language teachers, i.e. from 3 to 2 classes per day, so that they can have more time to teach English? All right, thank you, Mr. Tian, for your questions. First, we fully agree that surveys should be conducted or study be undertaken to understand students' interest in learning language when they are free from any pressure. So I would make that kind of suggestion. We would be working with the scholar on commissioning a tertiary education institution or research organization to conduct focus group meetings among students and parents. We can do it on district basis or school basis. We don't have to specify a certain school or a certain student, so that they can gladly join the surveys or the focus groups free of pressure. So the scope will cover primary 3 to primary 6 students, and we would do tracking surveys to understand the situation, and we will try to adopt a targeted approach in doing so. Second part of the question, we agree that for teaching materials, we hope to take reference or collect materials from overseas jurisdictions, especially for English language study. We would produce multimedia teaching materials, and would also be producing more TV programs with English and Chinese subtitles, so that the teachers can readily use such materials in their teaching. We would also organize related programs like English speaking days, English speaking weeks, 普通话speaking days or weeks, so that we can introduce interesting programs, language learning programs to campus and stimulate students' interest in learning languages. The cut in the number of classes for English language teachers, any plans in that regard? We have to make a detailed study on that. When I talked with the sector, people have different understanding towards the number of classes or have different thoughts on that subject. So I have to make a detailed assessment of the situation. Next, Ms. Story Lee. Well, no one will object to enhance students' biliterate and trilingual skills, and providing a good language environment is conducive to enhancing language standards. Now, middle class parents are increasingly supportive of or welcome international schools, because they normally provide a good language environment in terms of English and 普通话 and so on. I've read through the paper in detail. Now, Scholar has it discussed with schools on whether they can require students to talk to each other, say in English. Now, in some DSS schools, they do have such an arrangement, and such a measure is very popular among parents. Well, of course, we all understand that the language environment is very important to students in learning language. And in most schools, students talk to each other in Cantonese. So have you ever conducted any study in that regard? Now, as for using 普通话 in teaching Chinese, and it seems from the paper that you are just starting to undertake study in that regard. Now, today, not all primary and secondary schools are using 普通话 as a medium of instruction for teaching Chinese. Have you come up with a timetable for that? Now, it's been over a decade since the handover. Why isn't that achieved? Dr. K.K. Chen. For the language environment in primary schools, we have a grant program. We have this English Language Enhancement Fund, and over 40% of the schools did use the money to strengthen the language environment. Now, as for other programs in the schools, and actually many schools are organizing an English-speaking day and so on. So we would encourage schools to do more on that front. Now, as for using 普通话 to teach Chinese, we do have certain stringent requirements for teachers doing that. Now, for senior classes, the focus really is on training students up for taking exams. So that's why we can't achieve 100% in using 普通话 as a medium of instruction in teaching Chinese. I think it's very important that teachers use 普通话 to teach Chinese. Now, it's been over a decade since the handover. We want to enhance the 普通话 standards of our students. We don't even have a timetable of implementing that. I don't think this is acceptable. I hope that the scholar can consider my point, and you should come back within a year to tell us what your plans are. Now, students' 普通话 standards are not enhanced quickly now. And also on the language environment, I hope that the scholar can conduct a study on that front. And I think you can take reference from, say, DSS schools which are providing a good language environment. I think you can undertake today that you will conduct a study on that subject and then update us on your progress. And well, Chairman, the Secretary hasn't made that undertaking. Chairman, I will talk to scholar about this. Next one, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. The $5 billion is a huge amount. Students or children learned language fastest in a kindergarten and a primary school. But now, the programs you propose you must provide recurrent funding to these programs. Of course, in the first year, you might not be able to grasp out well what the needs are. But then, the Secretary, I hope that you can undertake that after a year when we do a review on the programs. We have clear indicators on the effectiveness of our biliterate and trilingual language policy. How effective have we been in improving the language environment? And what about the recurrent manpower needs? And the government should undertake that it would beef up support in that area, i.e. in implementing the biliterate and trilingual language policies. Now, that policy has everything to do with the curriculum of the schools, and I'm worried that the $5 billion fund, how is it linked to the curriculum in schools? Of course, I also support the implementation of non-formal curriculum, but then in the learning process, most students really learn most of the stuff from a formal curriculum. So if we can't afford the time to implement non-formal curriculum, then I'm afraid that we won't be able to achieve the desired results. If we take reference from experience in overseas jurisdictions, you will find that the non-formal curriculum is much worked on so that the students will have the language environment to practice the languages. So can you come back with also requests for, say, recurrent funding? I'll defer to the Deputy Secretary to tackle those questions, but I would like to add that we will be drawing up different indicators for different parts. We will have indicators for schools, and we will also have indicators for workplace English. And also, Mr. Wu mentioned this important point about kindergarten education and primary school education. In our latest proposals, we also propose conducting research on those areas. Deputy Secretary, please. About reporting on an annual basis, we would make a review on the progress of programs and whether extra resources are needed to support the programs. That will be part of the review. Now, as for the fund's relation to the curriculum development, actually we've been on frequent dialogue with the relevant people, and if we identify good experience in our programs or any deficiencies, we would tell the curriculum development personnel. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong next. Last year, I was engaged in filibustering about universal retirement protection scheme. Now, for this $5 billion fund, you said that the case is different from that in the past, and then the interest generator will be used for funding the various programs. What is the return amount each year? Well, he has already said that. It's just that you weren't here. He has already given us a figure. It's some $200 million per year. While you are repeating questions asked by others, that's not fair to the other members. I'm not going to allow members to ask repeated questions or questions asked by others already. Yeah, well, this is such a waste of time. All right, thank you, Mr. Leung, for your question. Now, if we assume that the rate of return is 5%, then the $250 million per year will be generated. I wonder whether that kind of return can be achieved. Now, what can you do with $250 million? You said that you are going to embark on so many different programs, Putonghua programs, English programs, workplace English, and so on. I don't think you can do so much with that amount. And I don't know why other members believe in what you said. I don't think you can do a lot with this small amount. Is $250 million sufficient? Do you think it's sufficient? You want to do everything, all kinds of programs. All right, do you think that you would be able to achieve so many programs with that amount? Well, thank you, Mr. Leung, for your question. There are several parts. For ongoing programs, we are already, those are ongoing. And we want to enhance the language environment for students, and we want to stimulate students' interest in learning language. That's what we want to do. Now, Starry Lee mentioned that international schools are very popular among parents, and DSS schools are improving the language environment, and that is those are also popular among parents.
你分咗幾多錢啊？
呢度呢
How much money did you get? Well, if you look at past activities, you can see that sometimes we had over 200 schools participating. Oh, yes, precisely. And you still have English, 普通话. $250 million. Will that be enough? Bureau Director, what's your estimation of effectiveness and efficiency? We would like to enhance activities and improve teaching materials for teachers. Then teachers can go back to their normal use of the teaching materials. They don't need to produce their own teaching materials, so it should be enough. All right, if you say it's enough, then it's enough. Next, Ms. Emily Lau. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say something about paragraph 8 of the paper. It said that worldwide research has shown that language development in the early years is powerful and may yield high returns from a future generation that is proficient in the use of languages. Let me go to kindergartens. Many years ago, native English-speaking teachers were hired for secondary schools. Back then, we already asked, why secondary schools? Why not kindergartens? If students start early, it would be better. And after so many years, the government is now awakened. What's happening? Maybe this is not the fault of Mr. Ng. Well, please look at past FC papers. We said that the earlier you teach the children, the better. And now I'm really very annoyed. You're just like discovering the new continent. Well, it's not just the language proficiency of English teachers that matter. We're talking about the abilities of teachers in all respects. If teachers' qualifications are good, the children will benefit. Now we're told that KG teachers should have a high quality. Be it English, Chinese, or other subjects, we need quality teachers. Bureau Director, will this fund cover those areas? Well, this fund is to give resources for innovation. In particular, for support for kindergartens, we really need to have innovative mode of teaching and teaching materials. I'll defer to the Deputy Secretary for the professional aspects. We're not talking about innovation. We would like the administration to do this many years ago. Ask the parents outside. You ask them how angry they are. Deputy Secretary, I'd like to thank Ms. Lau for her question. This time, for English and Chinese learning, we would like to be more focused in this paper. Just look at the macro environment and the language environment. Young children can master more than one language at the same time, so we'd like to equip our KG teachers. In what way, then, Mr. Chairman? She's been speaking for over 1 minute. But how are we going to attract high-quality people to serve as KG teachers? Bureau Director, I think that I understand Ms. Lau's point. We're doing two things. Number one, the vetting committee is proceeding with full steam. Number two, for short-term measures, we're actively considering how we can address short-term demands. We would like to enhance recruitment and retention of talents. Well, Mr. Chairman, Hong Kong has been talking about this for decades, and given his answer, we'll have to wait for another few decades. How can the children wait? Well, he has got your point. Mr. Wong Yok-man, the Language Fund was set up in 1999. In the past 10 odd years, language standards are ever lowering. even for senior officials, and employers complain about graduates and their language proficiency. So the language fund has not made any progress. Now the government is trying to force this speedy development on the students. I think they're destroying the thoughts and abilities of our students. You see, people are making their children play the piano, etc., etc. I have a grandchild who has suffered under this regime. Frankly speaking, tell me, what effects could be attained? No. And then language fund will focus on the support for the English and Chinese subjects. Those cool-headed parents are already thinking whether or not they should follow the mainstream schools and the government policies. They are miserable. Even unborn babies have to fetch kindergartens. People are crazy. For those women giving birth to babies with no local parents, they are trying to compete with locals for hospital beds, baby formula, and then when their children grow up, university places. Let me ask you, why should you use this money to force development upon the children? I think you are causing these children to suffer. And then I oppose the use of Putonghua to teach Chinese. Mr. Chen Yun, a language expert, said something about the teaching of Chinese and the medium of instruction that should be used. And he said that the use of Putonghua to teach Chinese is useless. We're talking about the Han language. Cantonese is more diversified than Putonghua. It has a longer history. Even Fujian, Hokklo, Chiu Chao, their dialects have a longer history than Putonghua. That's in history. To use Putonghua to teach Chinese will actually be torturing our students. Bureau Director, we're talking about biliteracy and trilingualism. I'm not a language expert, but I studied a lot into the Chinese language. But given 3 minutes, I really cannot teach you anything. You're the Secretary for Education, but you are proposing something that will be harmful to our next generation. Don't tell me that you want to use Putonghua to teach Chinese. Bureau Director, in recent years, the trilingualism and biliteracy of our students have improved. Do you speak Putonghua? Are you proficient in Putonghua, Bureau Director? Say a few words in Putonghua. Or you should have spoken in Putonghua entirely. Yes, use Putonghua. Please use Putonghua and Beijing dialect to speak, not Mandarin. And do you know the difference between Taiwanese Mandarin and Beijing or mainland Putonghua? Will you use Bopomorpho? Will you use Bopomorpho? And do you know what's Bopomorpho? Oh, you don't know that. Bureau Director, for biliteracy and trilingualism, in 2003, overall speaking, 35% of the population. Well, Mr. Chairman has not answered my question. He's repeating what's in the paper. He's repeating the figures. Has not answered my question. Why should we use Putonghua to teach Chinese? Do you know that that's harmful to our next generation? Just tell me no, then give me the reason. It's so simple. I asked you whether you can speak in Putonghua. If you can't, just tell me no. Bureau Director, brief answers, please. If you cannot answer the questions, then you don't need to answer. Well, I can speak Putonghua. I've been speaking Putonghua for over 10 years. But now I'd like to respond in Cantonese. In 2010, 60% of the population speak Putonghua. So there has been progress. That's why we have to be sustainable in our promotion of biliteracy and trilingualism. Second round, 2 minutes each. Mr. Ip Kin Yun. Mr. Chairman, concerning the use of Putonghua to teach Chinese, I'd also like to express my views. I previously taught Chinese in a secondary school, and I did teach Putonghua as well. Concerning the use of Putonghua to teach Chinese, we have to be very careful. Professor Jia Kam of Hong Kong University pointed out that the use of Putonghua to teach Chinese has advantages and merits under certain circumstances. But at the same time, students may lose their interest in Chinese because you're using an estranged language for communication. For young children, if the language environment and other conditions do not match one another, there may be difficulties. So the objective is to learn Putonghua well and to learn Chinese well. If certain schools possess the necessary conditions, they can use Putonghua. But should we mandatorily require all schools to teach Chinese in Putonghua? The Bureau should carefully consider that. The Bureau Director should tell us the general situation of teaching Chinese in Hong Kong and what will the Language Fund do? I defer to the Deputy Secretary. Deputy Secretary, for schools' policies, if they want to use Putonghua to teach Chinese, 3 conditions must be met. First of all, the teachers must be of a certain professional standard. Second, the school's conditions and the views of the parents and students are also important. They must have the support of parents in particular. So it's only when all these 3 conditions are satisfied that schools are asked to try as far as possible. Ms. Tarili? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond to the issue of the use of Putonghua to teach Chinese. I'm not a teacher. I don't know teaching theories. I'm not conversant with ancient Chinese as Mr. Wong Yok Man. The parents would like to use Putonghua to teach Chinese, and such schools are welcomed by parents. At least there will be a language environment for young children to master the use of Putonghua, where you can conduct surveys. As I said, I'd like you to conduct surveys. To use Putonghua to teach Chinese from the parents' viewpoint should be continued. So next year, I'd like to have a report from you. Secondly, you have to trigger students' interest in languages. Maybe you should start with dramas, songs, and so forth. You should try, as far as possible, to incorporate those in the formal curriculum. When you spoke on language environment, you mentioned other environments like extracurricular competitions. Hong Kong students are very busy. If you do not include these in the formal curriculum, such that all students can upgrade their Putonghua in English, is unreasonable. Why is it that only individual students can benefit by joining competitions? Dramas are important, be it Putonghua or English. Dramas can allow children to effectively learn languages. I think you should promote that in the primary stage and also within the curriculum. The next is music. When we were young, we did not have Putonghua. And then we were told that we should listen to songs and then learn English and Putonghua. You should try to create a language environment. I still think that you should incorporate all those in the formal curriculum, such that all students will have a common environment to learn and to upgrade their language proficiency. Please go back and study this and report us. Next, Mr. Ip Kin Yun, 1 minute. Mr. Chairman, just now the Bureau Director promised that resources would be given to schools. That's a very good practice, so I'll support the proposal. On many issues, if you can take care of school conditions, then the tension between the Education Bureau and the frontliners of schools could be eased and dissolved. Now, $5 billion, is that too much? In the past, $880 million had been earmarked for the enhancement of English proficiency and to reduce the burden of teachers. $323 million were used for an enhancement scheme. Now, given this $5 billion for the language fund, the usable amount would become less. You should turn this into recurrent expenditure. So I'd like the Bureau to actively consider, beyond the language fund, there should be recurrent expenditure to support the improvement of language teaching. 2 more members. I'll draw a line there. Mr. Arbitol, 3 minutes. Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief. I'm not an expert in this. I don't have in-depth knowledge into the subject. But for so many years, I've been talking to teachers and parents. They all asked why Hong Kong's language education had been so disastrous. It's because in the past, major mistakes were made. If you want a student to have good language proficiency, you must make the student have the motivation and interest to learn languages. If they're motivated, if they have interest in languages, they'll proactively learn languages. You choose your friends, songs, novels, dramas, and so forth. In Hong Kong, a lot of things were very wrong. In the past, English was taught as a mother tongue, but we didn't have the language environment, and not even grammar was taught. That's not possible. As a result, many people could not even grasp the fundamental grammar rules in the learning of English. And then Chinese was ranked the 5th, that is the top in terms of degree of difficulty. English easiest, levels 1 or 2. French also difficult. Russian also difficult, also at level 5. So if you use a language that is not familiar to the student to teach a subject, it's very difficult, like Putonghua. So I oppose that. You have to use the familiar language, that is the mother tongue, to teach the students. You need to learn pinyin, to write, to recognize the characters, etc., etc., before you can use Putonghua to teach. I'm not an expert. Mr. Kenneth Leung, let me speak in the capacity of a student, a biliterate and trilingual student. When I was in primary school, my school was very advanced. I already learned Putonghua. But we still used Cantonese to learn Chinese. And then every week in my primary school, we had 2 to 3 sessions on Putonghua. It was known as Mandarin Guoyu at that time. So can you understand my Putonghua? I think it's still quite good, isn't it? I lived overseas for quite a long time, so I speak a little bit French. But then in the primary stage, you must use a familiar language. Otherwise, the students won't be interested in Chinese. And of course, for English, you need to create an English environment. In Germany, in France, they use one language to teach German and one language to teach French, respectively. And Bureau Director, you are talking about 2 languages. How can you expect our students to learn languages well? If you want to start this at the age of 3, you're doomed to fail. So, I want the medium of instruction to be the mother tongue. I have 2 children who studied in Lingnan with Mrs. Luk Chiu Kwan Hong as the principal. She was an education expert, and she also said that to allow the children to learn well, you must teach in their mother tongue. In the UK, they have Welsh in Wales. At the beginning, they use Welsh to teach the children, and then they go back to English. I'm not saying that you should not teach Putonghua, but as Mr. Wong Yok Man said, our poems, our Southern linguistic system, etc., have a long history. So, while learning Putonghua well, you must use the mother tongue to teach Chinese before you can get the students interested. Now our schools have a choice between Cantonese and Putonghua. But as a parent, let me tell you my experience. For the children, if they can use mother tongue to learn Chinese, they'll get one less hurdle. And their interest in Putonghua will also be enhanced. So the government should very carefully handle this issue. Thank you. Well, I think many of our members here are qualified to speak because many of them have been educated in languages and their parents. But when you speak, do not use mixed languages.
To make things difficult for the interpreter. Since I've already drawn a line, so I will not allow for any further discussion on the technical issues. I think we can have an exchange on that topic on other occasions. So all members who wish to speak have already spoken. So I've already drawn a line. So I will now put this item to the vote. Will all members who are in favor of FCR 2013-2014 49, please put up your hands. Yes. Those who are against, please put up your hands. There is no objection and no abstention either. I am of the opinion that members, the majority of members present are in favor of the project. The project is, the proposal is now carried. Since we have 3 more papers, I hope we can exercise good time management on matters relating to technical issues and policies. I think we can deal with them at the panel level. Today we should focus on the approval of the funding application. The next item is FCR 2013-2014 50. Members are invited to approve Head 156, Government Secretariat Education Bureau, Subhead 700, General Non-Recurrent item, and that is to create a commitment of $50 million under Head 156, Government Secretariat, for the creation of a commitment of $67 million under the Capital Works Reserve Fund, Head 710, computerization, upgrading the web-based school administration and management system. On the 9th of December, the Bureau had consulted the education panel of this council. In attendance today, we have the following officials, the Secretary of Education, and also Deputy Secretary, Mr. Chen Ka-kei, and also System Manager, Mr. Kwok Kam Hong, and also Chief Curriculum Officer, Mr. Xie Man Hu. Before we discuss this item, I would first of all like to say, or before members speak, I'd like to tell members that one of our colleagues have already submitted a paper, and that is Mr. Mok Chai Nai Kwong has already tabled a motion. And having read the motion, I would rule that it's relevant to this item. So, and I therefore allow members to vote on this motion. I'd like to invite Mr. Mok to, first of all, to take 1 minute to explain to us his motion. At the panel meeting and also in our early discussion with the Secretary, our impression was that this funding application is about the upgrading, or let's focus on Part A. The $50 million is to be to improve, enhance the school's Wi-Fi system, and now it's repackaged as a proposal for supporting schools in adopting e-textbook. The problem here is that in the government's paper, they've pointed out that more than 1,000 schools, among more than 1,000 schools, 90% don't have the infrastructures. We're talking more than 900 schools. And this time you're only helping 100 schools. And it's not those who don't have a good system in place, but rather those who have a good system. And you're proposing to help them improve on the Wi-Fi system. Obviously, this is not enough. So we have the impression that we're being misled. Furthermore, we have reasons to worry. That is, if this is going to be linked with e-textbooks, people will have the impression that the pilot scheme, the EMAX pilot scheme, does it have priority? Or is it was that those who are doing better, who already have good system, will benefit more, and it will be easier for them to have the application approved? And would this further widen the disparity among schools? I think we discussed with the Secretary about this at the panel meeting, and he gave us the reassurance that in 5 years we'll cover all the secondary schools. I also believe in the Secretary, but I would like the Secretary to give us a clear undertaking. We said that 5 years is too long. How about 3 years? As if we were bargaining. So I think 3 years is really too long. Together with Ms. Sid-Ho and another colleague, we met with the officials from the Education Ministry of New York. They explained to us about the school Wi-Fi network. They told them that it was the largest single network in the United States, and this is how they teach. And I don't think the City of Hong Kong is poorer than the City of New York. They have one computer per student as far as teaching materials are concerned, and I won't dwell on that further. I'm just focusing on the funding application today. So in my motion, I have made 3 points, and I don't think I need to repeat them here. It's already on the screen. So I want the government to promise to implement this in 3 years. That is the basic infrastructure for the networks. Secondly, that there should be a policy. I don't think you should read out the motion itself. So according to the usual practice, normally we would have to ask members whether they would agree with your motion. Now that you've explained, I'm just trying to help and expedite things, Chairman. Let me ask members to decide whether or not we should deal with this motion. Now that you've explained your motion, and if all members understand, well, in that case, should I be given some make up time for my speech? I'll do that in a while. Will members now decide by show of hands whether or not we should deal with this motion? So the question is whether or not we are in favor of dealing with this motion. I don't intend to have a discussion here. Members now have. I've already explained to that since we received this motion from Mr. Mogg, and after reading it, I think I would say that it is relevant to this topic. So the question for members now is whether or not we should deal with this motion. And I don't intend to discuss the content of this motion. If you understand my point, the question now is whether or not we deal with this motion, because you have the right to vote on it. So I'll leave it to members to make that decision. Chairman, I don't intend Chairman. If members, I haven't even asked my question, Chairman. After we've dealt with this motion, will I have the chance to give my verbal report? Shouldn't you let me present my verbal report first? Well, when the motion was submitted, Chairman, we're discussing this item. I think you should wait until I have already given my verbal report first. Would you consult with the Secretary whether that is the right procedure? Procedurally, I should first present my report before we have a discussion and then deal with the motion. I think the procedure of the FC does not, touch on this point. So it will be up to members and also the decision of Chairman. Well, I don't want to, delay the time for members to vote on the motion. So you don't need to wait for my report. Then how can I, cast my vote? Your vote will be important. I think you would first need to listen to the report of the chairman of the education panel first. I think this is a joke, Chairman. So I now would like to first ask whether members will agree that we will deal with the motion. Chairman, it's a point of order here. Chairman, I hope that you yourself can accept Mr. Lam Tai Fai's suggestion. Okay, I'm fine with that. If you want to speak, and I don't think it would take up too much of members' time, I will now first allow the chairman or the panel chairman to present his report. I think that's the right thing to do, Chairman. The education panel at its meeting on December 9th discussed the funding application. Members expressed their support for the proposal to upgrade the web-based school administration and management system. Regarding the support for schools using e-textbooks, members noted that the administration intend to come up with a pilot scheme and to provide subsidies to 100 subsidized schools in order to enhance the equipment and facilities. Members believe that the schools to participate should include those with insufficient resources and those which are rather backward in their IT infrastructures. The members also asked the administration to provide the criteria for selection and also the name list of the schools which have been successful with the application. Members also passed 2 motions and urged the administration to provide support to schools and teachers, and within 3 years enhance the IT infrastructure of all schools. Thank you. We'll now come back to the question whether or not we should deal with this motion. If we agree to do that, then I will also allow members to discuss this paper after the Q&A. Otherwise, you can ask questions during the Q&A session. So will all those members who are who support Mr. Mok Lai Kwong's motion on upgrading the web-based school administration and management system, should we deal with that motion? Those who are in favor of dealing with the motion, please put up your hands. We have 7 in favor. Those who are against? So members have decided that we will not deal with the motion, and with that we will come back to this item, and the chairman of the panel already presented his verbal report. We'll now go to the Q&A part. 3 minutes per member. Mr. Mok Lai Kwong, Chairman, I'd like to reclaim my 2.5 minutes. I'm disappointed the members have decided not to deal with my motion. I don't know whether it has to do with the procedure. At the panel meeting, both my motion and Ms. Elizabeth Quart's motion touch on the same subject. If members agree to discussing my motion, I think we can put pressure on the government. But I have the spirit of sportsmanship, so I don't want to waste members' time and call for a division. And I hope that members, when you speak, you will support the points I raised in my motion. I also like to say that regarding point B, that is other than the $50 million for the infrastructures, there is also the web-based school administration and management system, and the government is proposing to apply for $67 million for the web SAM. I think that is necessary because the system has not been upgraded for so many years, and the software company will no longer support those softwares by 2015, so they must upgrade the system or the softwares. I'm worried that the method they propose to use, and I won't name any names, the software that you are now using is not new either, and it's not the latest. They do not use the latest, cloud technologies. Many peers in the industry said that we should use the latest version. For many schools, you're going to give them a server. To some extent, this is a resource. But then if you bought something and you don't want them to use it for too long, and you want them to upgrade to the latest technology, but the money has been used to buy the hardware which is placed at schools, and it's not the best way in terms of security. But you have no choice. You have to proceed immediately. I hope the Bureau can answer the question. I think I support your proposal, but but in a way, I must say I'm supporting you, giving you my support reluctantly. If you've started earlier, we wouldn't have ended up with the present situation. I'll ask Mr. Fogg to answer the question. Thank you, Mr. Yip, for your question. I think the upgrade that we apply for is necessary. Last year, we conducted a study regarding the directive development for the WebSAM, the next generation WebSAM. We are exploring the use of cloud technologies. We also look at the question of data security and also system capacity. After we've completed that study, we will come back and report to members. Mr. Yip. Unfortunately, we're not able to deal with the motion proposed by Mr. Mok Lai Kwong because I seconded the motion. I think the content of that motion has already been endorsed by the education panel. Even though we did not deal with the motion just now, but that motion has already been, agreed at the panel. So I'd like the administration to respond to the 3 points raised in that motion. The PTU has also conducted a study and it interviewed 120 schools, and I have the latest information with me now. One of the questions the PTU asked the school was, were not in the classrooms, do they have enough wireless networks? 71% of the schools responded and said that they didn't have such networks. You're now only proposing to include 100 supply schools, and 71% of schools did not agree with that proposal. In our motion, we said that for the next 3 years, is it possible to provide subsidy to all the schools in Hong Kong? These are issues which we are very concerned. Is it why do you only benefit a small number of schools first? In our study, we also asked another question. That is, if we adopt a proposal are we going to adopt a proposal, or should there be an ID coordinator in schools, and should there be a lump sum subsidy? 90% of the schools are in favor of having an ID coordinator and also giving the schools a lump sum amount. So obviously what the government is proposing is very different from the aspirations from the profession. I hope the Secretary can give us a response regarding those 3 points which represent our aspirations. Thank you. Among those 3 points, first of all, we also hope that all schools will be equipped with such facilities. Past experience, and I think members also know very well that different schools differ in terms of the adoption of IT technology. Past experience told us that if you implement a policy across the board at once, the schools will find it very difficult. So you have to bear in mind the schools, the students, whether they have the facilities, whether the teachers are ready. That is even more important. If you push it, in a mandatory manner, we will not achieve very good results. We are now applying for $50 million because we want to, expedite the project. We're not trying to rule out the 900 odd schools. We don't want to, waste any more time. We want to start with those 100 schools first. We've heard Mr. Yip and Mr. Mok's suggestion. For schools which think that they're capable, they can apply to this fund. For the other schools which are not, want to try, then we'll also allow them to apply. Mr. Ma Fong Kwok. Thank you. Regarding the government's proposal, I'm more in support of that proposal, but I wonder whether or not it is sufficient. I'm also worried about the question of e-textbooks. Recently, I received from many textbook publishers and e-textbook and publishers which are about to publish e-textbook materials. They've come to me for assistance. Regarding the process and the vetting and the approval of school textbook, they have many worries, and I think you should address those concerns and worries as early as possible. And this is the point I'd like to remind the administration. In the paper, you say that this is only a pilot project. For students, if 2 or 3 of them share a computer, I don't think this is satisfactory, and I don't think it shouldn't be so.
係咪可以做得？
If you are going to do a pilot, can you do it by way of one computer for each student? I'm sure that his parents are more than willing to afford paying for that. And for those students who don't have the means, then we can subsidize them. So can we consider that? And a response from the administration? Thank you, Mr. Moore, for your question about the vetting procedures for e-textbooks. We would take on board views expressed by various stakeholders. Now, as for one computer for each student, we want to do it in a more interactive way. So that's why 2 to 3 students should share one computer. Now, different schools have different conditions. So we would review the need for the computers depending on the progress of the program. Well, what I meant is that if the students can bring their own computer, they are welcome to do so. And all you need to do is to set out the specifications. So that will help you to utilize resources more effectively. Or you can do it by way of a partial subsidies for some of the students. I also want to mention that Mr. Charles Mock tabled this motion. I didn't vote on that motion, but then I don't think that it's right to move a motion like this today. Ms. Sit-Ho, next. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, we should provide one computer for each student. We know that if we want to do a laptop computer, the laptop computer is not very big, and then it is going to be shared by 2 to 3 students. That's not ideal. Now, if it is a terminal, then, well, it isn't good either. So at home, even in a home setting, you would not share a computer among 2 to 3 people. So I don't think the government is doing a right thing here. And you said that you would conduct a review upon the implementation of the program. I don't think that's right. I think each student should be given one computer. And also, I don't agree that only 10% of the schools should be involved in the pilot. Now, we have a huge surplus every year in the government coffers. Why aren't you willing to spend more? Now, the secretary said that some schools are not adequately equipped at the moment, and they will get frustrated if they are involved in the pilot scheme. Now, we've implemented this program for so many years. How come that they are still not ready yet? What are the facilities they are lacking? Is it because the administration has not provided sufficient resources to facilities in schools, and sufficient teachers? Now, Mr. Mock also said that 3 members met with the Education Department of the New York City, and we discussed the issue with the chief executive in charge of e-textbook learning. Well, they are making very good use of e-textbooks, and they are tailoring the education programs to each and every student. Well, in New York City, there are so many poor students, and the students vary a lot in their ability to learn. So e-textbooks or e-learning can really cater to the individual needs of the student. And I don't think we should just use e-textbooks to reduce the cost of education. You are just not fully utilizing the potential of e-textbooks. We're committing so much resources to the program, and I think we should walk this extra mile to turn this technology for benefiting the students, i.e. catering our programs to suit the needs of each and every student so that they can benefit more. Next, Mr. Wong Kwok Hing. Chairman, I support this paper. Earlier at the panel meeting, I also mentioned or asked why we can't implement the program among all schools in Hong Kong, and why isn't each student given one computer. So the secretary did do some explaining that day, but you can supplement, of course, today. Now, my brief question is this. When e-textbooks are implemented in the future, what is the price differential between e-textbooks and published textbooks? I'm worried that e-textbooks would be too expensive, at least at the initial stage. 2 questions. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Wong, for your questions. I want to stress again that e-textbook makes up only a small part of e-learning. I want to stress this when actually I reported this to the chairman of the education panel. I'm waiting for the preparation of the 4th 5-year IT in education strategy, which will be compiled next year. So all the things that Mr. Wong mentioned will be included in that strategy. Now, in other successful cities like or countries like Singapore and Korea, we all know that schools should share experience with each other, and some schools should take the lead and act as change agent. So that's why we are launching this program even before the policy address is announced, and we want to the 100 schools to participate first, and then we welcome other interested schools to join the scheme later on. So with such experience, we can come up with a better 4th 5-year IT in education strategy. Mr. Yip Kin Yun. Mr. Frankie Yik. I'm in the minority as far as views are concerned. I support the government's proposal. 2 years ago, we launched this Energizing Schools program. We committed to give resources to 14 schools. I agree with the secretary in his remarks. And that is whether the school team is ready to take up the program, or else it will be a waste of time and resources. Now, in the 14 schools under our program, some of them have already embarked on e-learning. Some are more successful, others are not that successful. They're still learning. So I think a pilot program is good, and that experience can be accumulated before the program is rolled out in full-fledged. Of course, I also support that there should be one computer for each student when the program is rolled out fully. Now, I have visited some schools, and some of the computer facilities are really very poor. So I hope that the Education Bureau can commit more resources to help them upgrade their facilities, the computer facilities. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. It's such a pity that the motion would not be dealt with. What we are worried is that in many schools, as what the EDB understands and what Mr. Yip says, they're not ready as far as their hardware is concerned. So if we have the resources to help them, then that would be good. Now, only 10% or 100 schools will be covered in the pilot program. And we were worried that you are just helping those who are already have good resources, and you're not helping the underprivileged or schools which are at a disadvantage. Well, for schools which are already doing well, and you're trying to help them further, but then for schools which are not adequately equipped and they don't get the assistance, And if the program continues, that will only widen the digital gap. So this is what we are worried about. So, Secretary, can you tell us, in terms of selection of the schools, would the point I raised be taken heed of? Now, for schools which don't have much resources and which are, in terms of technology, relatively backward, they are not going to get any help. So we are going to widen the gap between these two types of schools. So our ultimate objective is that we would extend it to all schools. But we are launching this pilot program, and we want some schools to go ahead first or proceed first. We have taken on board members' views expressed last time. We have made this decision that schools which are interested but then are not adequately equipped will still be allowed to join the pilot program. We don't want to see a digital divide. So can you explain, in your choice of 100 schools, how many of them are well equipped, and how many of them will be are inadequately equipped, and then you are going to give them more resources? All right, in the last panel meeting, we said that we are going to provide such information later. Next one, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. And we would, well, there's a saying that we want to support something, but then when it actually happens, then we would like to shy away from it. Well, for Feng Kai School in Shangshui, they wanted to embark on e-learning, and they asked for resources from the EDB, but then they were not given any resources by the EDB. All right, we have this funding now, and I have no choice but to support it. But I want to spend some time explaining why I object to dealing with Mr. Charles Mok's motion. I am confused, Chairman. At the Finance Committee, we said that we should not talk about policy issues. We should focus on the financial arrangement. As, say, in the PWSC, we would be discussing the allocation of funding on the particular projects, and we should not dwell on the policy issues. Now, Mr. Charles Mok's motion is in a way related to the funding application, but then I think that policy issues should be discussed at the relevant policy panel and not at the FC. I also raised that there is inadequate support for IT personnel in schools. So what I wanted to say is that I don't object to issues of concerns raised by Mr. Charles Mok, but I am not for dealing with it at this occasion, i.e. at the FC. So I hope that the Chairman can clarify the situation that I mentioned. Next, Ms. Elizabeth Quat. About these two funding applications, I support them. I tend to agree with Dr. Lo Wai Kwok's point of view. Actually, last time, you and I motioned a similar, or tabled a similar motions. And so if motions have already been discussed at the relevant panels, it's inappropriate to table such motions again at the House Committee or the FC, or else we will be repeating acts already done or completed. Now, Wi-Fi in a school is a basic infrastructure, I think. And I also think that 5 years are too long, and I hope that you can complete the installation of Wi-Fi in all schools in 3 years instead of 5 years. But then for e-learning, our aim is to help students self-learn, and that we will improve the learning environment, and then the teachers can cope with the individual needs of the students. So we should not just install the hardware facilities alone. Next step is really to help teachers and schools and parents to get prepared. This is an important issue that the EDB should consider. Let's not repeat mistakes made in the past. In the past, we invested a lot in the hardware in school. We bought a lot of computers, but ultimately they were not put to good use. This is a waste of resources. So I want the Secretary to explain to us how you are going to help the parents and the teachers to equip themselves for e-learning. Now, next is on the enhancing the WebSAMS, web-based school administration and management system. I reluctantly support your proposal. I think it's really being done too late. You should not repeat the mistakes you have made in the past. We are just, this time round, we're just enhancing the hardware. We're not enhancing the effectiveness, and we haven't yet mapped out the future development direction. So I hope that the administration can come up with your future plans and let us know of your plans, and in particular how this WebSAMS can help schools management and enhance their effectiveness. Secretary, a brief response, please. Just now, I mentioned that early this year, we would present the fourth five-year IT in education strategy, and that will include all the points members have raised. I want to stress that leadership in schools is very important. The principals and the teachers are important. And if they are confident of taking forward the program, then that would help in achieving success in such programs. Mrs. Regina Yip. I would like to thank the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary for discussing with me 2 times the issue. I agree with the panel's view that all schools should be covered, and especially those schools at a disadvantage should be given particular help. Our parents are very concerned that if without good management, students may play games on the computers instead of learn through the computers. So I'm happy to hear that the Secretary will be providing a group learning environment for the students in terms of e-learning. Now, in boarding schools in overseas jurisdictions, the school is monitoring how students are using the computers. Well, in Hong Kong, people are worried that there might be privacy concerns if that is being done. But I think you can come up with a policy or a measure to ensure that the computer is not being abused. Well, in our program proposed, we will be adopting new technology, i.e. subscription mode, i.e. individual schools don't buy their own computers. We would do it through an entire computer system. And for students going online, there will be software dealing with students' use of the computers. So that has proved successful in many other jurisdictions. And in terms of risk management and protection of computers, we can do it through this entire computer system. Ms. Sitho, 1 minute. Why is it that some schools are not ready yet? Why? What reasons? Let me cite 2 examples. One school is doing well. The teacher is very committed. Well, I'm trying to explain the reasons. Now, when the teacher changes, then the school relapses back to the conditions it was before 3 to 5 years ago. So it's important that we have good leadership in the school. I also mentioned that just now. That's one example. Also, some teachers are not familiar with the hardware and the technology, and they they bear a lot of pressure because they have to make purchasing decisions. If 3 different types of computers are purchased and then the computers are not well connected to each other, then that's going to fail. So, we should adopt a sort of integrated approach. Well, please give them some money to appoint consultants to do this kind of work for them.
冇其他問題呢，本人
If members don't have other questions, I'll put this item to the vote. Will those in favor of the proposals in FCR 2013-14-50 please raise their hands? Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. None. Any abstention? No. I think the majority of the voting members are in favor of the proposals. The proposals are approved. We have 2 more items to go, so we'll try to handle them as far as possible. We'll extend this meeting by 15 minutes, so we would like to finish the remaining 2 items by 7:25. One of the items involves environmental protection. All right, item 6 on the agenda, FCR 2013-14-51. This item invites members to approve the creation of a new commitment of $100 million under Head 158, Government Secretariat, Transport and Housing Bureau, Transport Branch, for establishing the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, and an increase in the monthly subsidy level from $5,000 to $6,000 of the seagoing training incentive scheme under Head 100, Marine Department. On the 16th of December 2013, the government consulted the Commerce and Economic Development Panel of the LegCo. In attendance today for this item with Mr. Yao Shengwu, Undersecretary for Transport and Housing, Mrs. Sharon Ip Lee, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, Ms. Juliana Chan, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, and Mr. Wong Sai Fat, Assistant Director of Marine. Mr. James Chen is not here, the panel chairman not here. So, questions? Members, 3 minutes per member, including questions and answers. Please grasp your time well. Mr. Frankie Yik. Mr. Chairman, I have to declare that I'm a member of the tripartite working group mentioned in paragraph 28. I mean the tripartite task force on manpower training under MIC. Apart from the original proposals, new proposals have been taken on board by the government in this paper as to how we can attract more young people to join the industry. We all know that for aviation, in the foreseeable future, it will still have competitiveness, but we don't have sufficient manpower, particularly in terms of aircraft engineering. On many occasions, I said that in the airport, the aircraft repair operators have been losing businesses to Singapore. The SARG's and the CPG's policy is to support Hong Kong as an international maritime center. A report is due to be released. So if we want a further development, we must have more talents. Now we're talking about university-level students, new entrants and incumbents. Most of the programs here are on-the-job training programs. I support them, and I urge members to support them as well, so that in terms of aviation and the maritime industry, we can have sustainable development. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Mr. Chairman, the FTU fully supports the proposals in the paper. Be it aviation or the maritime industry, they're suffering from gaps in human resources. We've actually observed faults, so the administration should enhance its effort in training talents. I would like to ask, can the government start earlier? For example, in secondary school, particularly in senior secondary schools, there should be introductory presentations in schools to attract more talents to the industries. And recently we had a TV program on aviation. Immediately, the attractiveness was enhanced. So you have to do more publicity and promotion so that our students will know more of these industries. So secondary school should be an appropriate stage for introducing our students to these industries. Undersecretary, Mr. Wong's views are very good. That's why in paragraph 25, we said that apart from supporting the trainees and students by offering scholarships and internships to them, we would like to use around $7 million to do publicity, education, and promotion amongst our youngsters. The paragraph also mentioned talks in schools as well as career exhibitions. The direction proposed by Mr. Wong is very correct. For these two industries, they actually have very good prospects. However, our young people may not be clear about prospects in these two industries. For example, for shipping, their mindset still remains in the old era. That is a dirty industry, for example. So we've allowed secondary students to understand the industry more. And there are internship subsidy programs for university students to gather experience in these companies. And such experience will offer university students first-hand information and experience. So our training effort has started from there, after absorbing advice from the members of the industries. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, as the representative of the engineering sector in the LegCo, and as a new member of the LegCo, I already received invitations from friends in the aircraft engineering sector to have talks and communications. In fact, Hong Kong has performed very well in this sector. We've actually gone beyond Hong Kong and established aircraft repair and maintenance points. So there's huge room for development. But we're suffering from manpower shortage, which has suffocated the development of the industry. And this will in turn impact hugely on Hong Kong's aviation industry. 2,200 vacancies are expected according to the paper. I won't be surprised by that figure. So I very much support the two funding proposals. In fact, the amounts asked for are too little. If you talk about aviation, the shipping industry, just think of the fisheries. We gave them $500 million. So I think the amount asked for here is really too little. The government must enhance its effort in this regard. Logistics, transportation, and aviation engineering are the subsectors of my constituency. The engineering sector of Hong Kong is very much concerned about them. We should perform well to attract more young people to join the industries. Mrs. Regina Ip, very simple, Chairman. The New People Power fully supports the funding proposals here. We should do more publicity and promotion to attract more young people to the industries. Mr. Ip Kenyon, Mr. Chairman, I also very much support the proposals so that we can attract more young people to join the aviation and shipping industries. We must provide diversified outlets for our young people. All along, students' choices have been very limited. It seems that they can only enter universities, and our young people have lost opportunities to develop their interests. Our young people have a lot of talents. Some definitely would want to develop in the aviation and shipping industries. So if we can have such a fund, we'll be providing more incentives for people to join the industries. To the whole of Hong Kong and to our young people, this is good. So it's good to have this scheme, this fund. If we can turn this into a recurrent item, it will be even more reasonable. Obviously, this is long-term commitment. To do it by way of a fund means that this is only a one-off grant, which is a bit different from the original nature of the proposals. Well, this is a rather strange form of financial management. Of course, this will not affect my support for the fund and the scheme. As far as I know, some schools in Hong Kong also provide such services, particularly in the senior secondary school stage, which is a very important time for counseling students to choose their career. I have to say that a certain institution has provided training programs for those who are interested in the shipping industry. I don't know whether it still exists. Anyway, the scholarships and the welfare schemes should cover such programs as well. Who can respond? Please be brief. First of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the honourable members for their concern about the adequacy or otherwise of this sum of money. I'd like to thank members for their concern and support in this regard. Yet, after all, this is public money, so it's important to be cautious. A 1,000 miles start with the first step. So if students are interested in these industries, we'll see whether we need more funding, and if so, we'd like to have member support. Mr. Kim Yun mentioned a particular institution. So if members have similar examples, they can approach us. We did look at that institution. Mr. Tony Tse? Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to say that I support the funding proposals here. I read paragraph 12 of the paper. Same as my colleagues, I'm concerned whether or not the funding proposal here is sufficient, because here only 265 cadets are to benefit in 5 years' time. So I'd like the Bureau to go back and further consider this. I'd also like the administration to assess the following. That is, the wastage rate of those students who have actually joined these industries. I'm concerned that after the internship, if there are no further incentives for them to further their development in the industries, then the money would be wasted. If there are no other questions from members, I'll put this item to the vote. Will those in favor of the proposals in FCR 2013-14-51 please raise their hands? Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. None. Abstention? No. I think the majority of the voting members are in favor of the proposals in the paper. The proposals are endorsed. Final item, item 7, FCR 2013-14-52. To better grasp or master our time, I'd like to see who would like to ask questions. Mr. Wong Kok Hing, any more? I'd like to draw a line there. Dr. Kenneth Chan, 3? I saw 3 hands. You have to press your request to speak button after you have raised your hand. Altogether 4. We have to grasp our time well. I can only accord 2 minutes to each member. Mr. Wong Kok Heng? Sorry, the speaker is not coming through. Do you allow the panel chairman to make reports? Well, too many chairmen were absent. Well, Mr. To, perhaps you should introduce the paper to us first. Thank you, FC Chairman. The EA panel at a special meeting on the 2nd of December 2013 discussed the issue. Members did not oppose to the submission of the proposal to the FC. They think the proposals are very appropriate. This is, but at the same time, they expressed concerns on a number of aspects. They would like the administration to expedite the elimination program so that car owners can replace their vehicles. And for pre-Euro 4 diesel vehicles, the owners may be hugely affected, particularly the driver-cum-owner operators. So the administration should try to assist them. The government should also explain the details of the scheme to them, particularly the calculation method for the ex gratia payment. And some members were concerned about the impact of the scheme on the car repair industry, such that the garages, small garages, will not be monopolized or replaced by the big consortia. There's also a timetable for elimination, and there's the stipulation of a 15-year lifespan counting from 2014. The panel also supported the proposal, but members are concerned about the Euro 5 and Euro 6 vehicles. As computer repair programs are so popular, they are very concerned about the members of the car repair industry. Well, our time schedule is very tight. 1.5 minutes per member, all right? Because I don't want this item to affect those who are in the car industry. Mr. Wong Kok Heng, well, I support your suggestion to shorten the speaking time. I hope that the Bureau will pay attention to the fact that the car repair industry might be unduly affected by these proposals, particularly the old repair and maintenance workers. Their livelihood may be affected. Please reply briefly. Secretary, well, we understand the situation. We're now following up on the situation to see how we can accord learning opportunities to the incumbent members of the industry for the sake of sustainability. Dr. Kenneth Chan, just 1.5 minutes. I don't want to ask any question. The subsidiary legislation had already been passed, so we've given you money, and this issue is so important to public health. We've adopted your reform proposals, but you are now retreating. I hope that you can report to the panel once every 6 months. We don't want annual reports. We want biannual reports. And then you must present the blueprint to us and see whether or not your efforts can attain the set indicators. Take, for example, the air quality objectives. You should take measurements to see whether our air quality meets the objectives. And then for the Environment Bureau officials, we asked them why we only got the figures for the same day but not for the previous days. Now we can see statistics for several days. Now don't just listen to the members of the industry and give them money. You should look at public health as well. Next, Mr. Chan Hak-kan. Mr. Chairman, I have to commend the Environment Bureau here. They've listened to views of the industry when amending the legislation. They have struck a balance between public health and businesses. $17.7 billion is really a huge sum of money. we want the money to go to environmental protection and not to individual garages or car companies. Many car owners are worried that by the time it's their turn to replace their vehicles, they won't be able to buy second-hand vehicles because they may not have enough money for first-hand cars, particularly for the pre-Euro vehicles. By then, we may still be 30,000 odd vehicles short. So I'd like the Secretary to tell us how he can make sure that the supply of second-hand vehicles will be sufficient. Or will you allow parallel goods to be introduced into Hong Kong to address the possible shortage? Thank you for your question. I think I'll liaise with the relevant industry.
We understand members' concern. On the one hand, we need to improve air quality. At the same time, we have to also ensure the survival of the industry. Mr. Gary Chen, I think, mentioned a figure of 11.7 billion. It should have been 11.4. Mr. Yip, why, Francis Yip? I've been involved in the whole process, and I'm very happy that the Bureau has heard the voice of the industry, and everybody now accepts this final arrangement. I have one question. According to the paper, in order to enhance management, if the owners want to apply for the ex-gratia subsidy, they must have a certificate from the vehicle scrappers. So I'd like to know whether or not you've started the registration mechanism, and if so, what is the latest update? I see the Secretary nodding. It says so it has already started. And through what channels will you inform the members of the trade, and how can the vehicle owners apply a list of the vehicle scrap yards from the Environmental Bureau? I think we had a problem with the catalyst converters last time. I don't want the same problem being repeated this time again. Simple response. Thanks for your question. On the 2nd and 3rd of this month, we organized 2 briefings for the motor scrap yards, and more than 100 attended. As of yesterday, we have received 49 applications, and we are still accepting applications. Chairman, it is most important to inform the trade. Don't forget to inform the trade. We certainly will write a letter to remind the industry again. All right? If there are no further questions, I will now put this item to the vote. Will all members who are in favor of FCR 2013-14 52, please put up your hands. Thank you. Those against? None. Abstention? None. I believe the majority of members present are in favor of the proposal. The proposal is now approved. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.